Alright, so let's move along. Next thing we're going to talk about is our curves over here. Alright, now I know it looks very complicated and quite intimidating, but it's okay. All you have to do is to click this over here. Gives us a two-panel view of the animation over here on our viewport and also the graph editor. Alright, so let me try to walk you through this. Let's, instead of looking at everything at once, let's just pick one. Let's just move on our translate X for, right, maybe not our foot control first. Let's work on this belly controller that we have over here, right? So let's start off with something simple. So as for this belly controller, we only actually animated, if I just scrub through a bit over here, we only animated the translate Y. Alright, so that's the only axis that we animated, so we can just isolate this by selecting just translate Y. And as you can see, these are the dots. These black dots over here are representing our keyframes that we have right over here at our timeline. Alright, so just to reiterate again, whatever we have here at the bottom here, this is equals to our timeline, and whatever we have over here at the top over here or at the vertical line, this represents the units and the numbers that we have keyed in earlier. Alright, so negative numbers at the below and the positive numbers at top. So the idea is for us to make sure that our animation curve, just putting it in the most simplest of form so that everyone can understand what this curve does is, let me just select everything here and press F to frame it. The simplest ways to think about it is basically we want to have our curves here to look not so blocky or not so, well, it has to look nice and curvy. Alright, so that's the best way for me to describe it really for beginners. Alright, since we don't really understand what this is going, what's happening over here. So the idea is for us to make sure that we don't have anything that is a bit funny where suddenly you see something that perhaps if I were to break this tangent over here, you don't see something that goes like that. Alright, this is totally weird. Right, this is a non-example. So if I were to play back this guy over here, right, scrub through this, you see what happens, right? Some funny nonsense starts to happen. Alright, so we just want to make sure that our curves are consistent. Alright, we don't want something, unless it's a very unique animation, we don't want something that, if I just, maybe not this one, maybe just something like this, we don't want something like this. Right, again, if I were to pass by this, you see it suddenly like drops like that and our animation will start to look very blocky. Right, so the idea is to make everything consistent and kind of smooth. We want to have smooth tangent lines over here and curves over here, as best as we can get it to be, unless it's a very specific animation as I mentioned earlier, but for the most part we want everything to look smooth. Alright, so that's a basic idea of what we're trying to do. So first off, what we have to do is we're gonna use our cycle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to view and then we're gonna click on infinity. Alright, and secondly, if you don't already have your post infinity curves on, so you're gonna go to post infinity and then cycle. So what that does is, if I just zoom out a bit, I can see a cycle of what's happening in our animation loop over here. Alright, now right off the bat, what I see here is this guy, right, which is the first and also the last frame over here. They don't really match up. It's like suddenly it goes down and goes like that. Alright, we want something to be kind of smooth, even though there's a transition happening over here. Right, as well over here, if we kind of frame this a bit better, as you can see, the lines is not exactly smooth down. It's a bit of a crisscrossy line. Alright, so let's try to fix some of this. So what we can do basically is to select our, for example, this keyframe over here at 13. I'm going to select this. This would break our tangent. Now once the tangent is broken, I have these two options I can use around this. I'm going to use my middle mouse button, and basically I'm just going to lift this a bit higher and lift this a bit lower so that the curve would move a bit more smoother. Alright, now the next thing over here I'm going to look at is my Y over here. As you can see, it goes down and it kind of like going that way. It's not really consistent, so I can only adjust for this part since this is the last keyframe, I can only adjust this part for now, and then I'll go to my first keyframe, and then I can adjust this a bit further so that we can see how it looks like from over here. Right, so we can see what's happening over here as we adjust this. So you want to push it down a bit so that it's a bit more consistent as it goes around this floor, right? You probably want something like that. Right, so if I just put it like that, and we'll scrub through, and then we see what happens. And this is our belly control, mind you. So you can see there's a big dip over there, right about here. If I just play back this, you can see over here at the first part there's a big dip, and that is not very nice. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that everything kind of goes smoothly, just like what we have over here, and when we play it back, right, so it's a bit more consistent. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do for all of these controllers which has animation on it. So let's go with the simplest one. So the next thing is we're going to focus on the neck. I'm going to just select everything that I have over here and press F, and again I'm going to isolate. So for this one, I only move my rotate X over here, and again I'm going to use my infinity cycles, right, post infinity cycle, right, so I can start to see the cycle over here. Now again, for most part, this one doesn't really need much tweaking, but I can just do just a bit over here, just try to tweak some of this guy to make it a bit more smoother. Right, so for this part where the transition happens, it's kind of okay, but this is kind of flat over here, as you can see the cycle over here. So I can just look at this from right here, where I can start to do some adjustments so that it will have a nicer and smoother curve. Alright, so we didn't want something like that where it's a bit blocky over here. We like it to be something along this line. Alright, so for the most part that is kind of okay as well. Let's see if we can adjust this a bit more. Right, so let's play back this. This looks slightly a bit better. Now let's go to our mouth. That's the next easiest one to do. Again, we only work on the rotate X for this guy, and I'm going to use my post infinity cycle. Again, there's nothing much that we need to change over here because it's a very simple animation for this one. Right, but yeah, if you need to, you can just adjust some of this a bit. Make sure you break the tangent first. Okay, so probably I'll change this up a bit more, just slightly here, and probably I'll adjust some of the movements over here as well. Now if you want to move the keyframe, remember you need to press the middle mouse button to move them around. Alright, so this guy is kind of okay, should be for this guy as well. Go to our rotate X and get our post infinity cycle up. Let me just put this up here. I'm gonna break this tangent over here, and again we'll just try to keep it a bit more consistent. Alright, so that's it for the neck and the mouth. Let's go to the more interesting parts, which is these guys over here. Right, so let's look at this one by one. So we didn't have anything for translate X, Y, nor Z, right? They all are the same. It's mostly our rotations over here. So let's look at rotate X first. Right, again I'll bring my infinity and cycle. Right, and again I'll just adjust this a bit more. And for this part, it doesn't really need much adjustment. We just want to make sure that everything is smooth and stuff like that. So I just move it a tad bit just to make sure. Alright, something like that is okay. Let's go to our Y. Right, and let's have a look at our cycle again. This is pretty consistent as well, so probably not going to do much adjustment on this. And Z as well. I'm not gonna do much on this. Maybe I just tweak this a bit here, so as to go down a bit, go up a bit. Oops, not that way. Alright, something like that should be alright for now. Okay, so that's that guy. Let's look at him next. Again, for the most part, he's kind of okay, so I'm not gonna adjust this guy. But I know I did quite a bit on this guy, which is the wrist. So let's go and frame everyone and bring out their cycle. So let's focus one at a time. So right over here, right off the bat, I want to do some changes here. Let me go and make sure that this looks a bit more consistent. This can go slightly higher in my opinion and make the curve a bit better. So right here at the front part over here, that's where it connects to the last frame. Let's break this tangent up and try to make it a bit more consistent. Break this tangent as well. Right, so that looks a bit more consistent. So we need to do all these minor tweaks so that we can get our animation to look a bit better. Again, right over here as well, as I said, we don't want to have this kind of choppy kind of animation happening. So let me break this tangent and see what's going on. This is this guy over here. See if you can move this up slightly. Alright, maybe I'll adjust this a bit more. And adjust this just a bit more downwards. Same goes for this guy. We can go a bit more downwards. See if we can tweak this a bit better. Alright, I think should be okay for now. Let's go back over here. Let me just tweak this a bit more. Just want to make sure the curve is slightly better. Okay, probably have to go to this front guy over here and break the tangent as well. Push him up a bit. Alright, that looks a bit better. Okay, so if we play back our left hand over here, so you can see there's a slight difference where the left hand's animation looks a bit more smoother than the right hand, right? So especially over here, just focus on this area where the wrist is. When I slide through over here, you can see that there's a weight over there, and then it comes and slides back over there, right? So compare that to this guy over here where it's a bit more rigid, to this right hand over here where it's a bit more rigid, alright, compared to the left hand where it's a bit more animated, alright. It follows much more smoother, and it really follows the character, the spirit of the character, where he looks really clumsy and a bit careless rather than a very rigid robot, which is more of this right hand over here. So that's what we're going to do for the right hand. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to adjust the curves for the right hand before finally adjusting the curves for the legs.